Jungle.
Welcome to State of Affairs Zimbabwe, your trusted platform for news, political analysis, and truth-telling without fear or favor. Today, we revisit one of the most defining chapters in Zimbabwe's modern history, Operation Restore Legacy. Nearly 8 years after it shook the political foundations of our nation, the question we must ask is simple. What legacy has truly been restored? November 2017. Zimbabweans across the country woke up to an unfamiliar sight. Tanks rolling into Harare, soldiers patrolling the streets, and the unmistakable sound of change in the air. The military, under the leadership of General Constantino Chiwenga, announced a bold operation, Operation Restore Legacy. The mission was presented as a patriotic and corrective measure, an attempt to cleanse the ruling party, ZANU PF, of what the generals described as criminal elements surrounding then-President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. The nation was told that this was not a coup, but a military-assisted transition. For many citizens, weary from decades of economic decay and political suffocation, it felt like a new dawn. Crowds filled the streets. Flags waved. People celebrated in unity, believing that Zimbabwe had been given a second chance. But as time would prove, revolutions are not measured by the fall of a man, but by the rise of integrity that follows. In the days following Mugabe's resignation, hope returned to Zimbabwean hearts. President Emerson Mnangagwa, once exiled and hunted, now took center stage as the man of the moment. He promised reform. He promised economic revival. He promised to rebuild institutions destroyed by corruption. And above all, he promised to restore legacy. But nearly 8 years later, those promises ring hollow, because instead of purging the system of corruption, the system appears to have recycled it, giving it new names, new faces, and new titles within ZANU PF structures. Fast forward to 2025. Zimbabwe's political landscape has once again been thrown into controversy following shocking developments in Harare, Province. Joachim Chivayo, recently arrested in South Africa for allegedly attempting to sell 6 bars of unwrought gold worth over 15 million rand, has been quietly absorbed into ZANU PF's Harare province main wing. To many Zimbabweans, this appointment is not just surprising, it's infuriating. Joachim is the younger brother of the controversial businessman Wicknell Chivayo, a figure long associated with state contracts, political connections, and public scandal. Now, with Joachim facing serious allegations involving gold smuggling and cross-border criminal dealings, his inclusion in ZANU PF's leadership raises difficult questions. How can a ruling party that once promised to restore legacy justify aligning itself with individuals facing such grave accusations? What does this say about the moral compass of those in power? The Chivayo name has become synonymous with political controversy in Zimbabwe. From lavish spending and public boasting to questionable business deals, the family's reputation has often symbolized the growing divide between Zimbabwe's struggling citizens and its politically connected elites. Joachim's arrest in Brakpan, South Africa, alongside a local national, added another dark stain to this name. The alleged attempt to sell unwrought gold worth millions of rand was not just an act of greed, but a reflection of a system where connections, not conscience, determine one's fate. And yet, instead of distancing itself from such individuals, ZANU PF appears to be welcoming them. Joining Joachim in ZANU PF's Harare provincial structures is none other than Kubakwasha Nhamo Tagwirei. For years, Tagwirei's name has hovered around the highest corridors of power, whispered in connection with fuel cartels, mining concessions, and government contracts that never see public scrutiny. Though he has not been formally charged with any crime, Tagwirei's reputation speaks volumes. He is seen by many as the symbol of elite impunity, a man whose wealth and influence have grown as Zimbabwe's ordinary citizens. sink deeper into poverty. His inclusion in provincial leadership only reinforces what critics have long argued, that ZANU PF's internal politics are no longer driven by ideology or service, but by access to wealth and proximity to power. 8 years ago, Operation Restore Legacy was sold to Zimbabweans as a national rebirth. It was supposed to mark the end of corruption, cronyism, and political manipulation. But the recent inclusion of controversial figures like Chivayo and Tagwirei suggests that the so-called cleansing operation merely reshuffled the deck, replacing one network of privilege with another. The same patronage systems that fueled Mugabe's downfall now appear to be thriving under new leadership. Contracts still go to the connected. Justice still bends toward the powerful. And those who speak against corruption still face intimidation, arrest, or silence. If Operation Restore Legacy was a pledge to rebuild Zimbabwe's moral and institutional integrity, then today's events represent its total collapse, because a legacy cannot be restored by those who profit from its decay. It is not just about politics. It is about ethics, accountability, and the soul of a nation. Zimbabweans were told that 2017 was a turning point, that the dark chapter of elite impunity had ended, that ordinary citizens would once again have a voice in shaping their future. But as long as those accused of corruption and criminal conduct continue to rise through political ranks, those promises mean nothing. On the streets of Harare, Bulawayo, and Mutare, citizens are talking. Some express disbelief, others express resignation. Nothing has changed, says one shopkeeper. They just changed the names, but it's still the same story. Social media is ablaze with outrage. Hashtags calling out the party's hypocrisy trend for days. Analysts, journalists, and even former party insiders question how such appointments could be made in the face of public scandal. The response from the top, however, has been muted. No condemnation, no explanation, no accountability. The danger is not just in the appointments themselves, but in what they represent. When corruption becomes normalized, when individuals under criminal suspicion are rewarded instead of investigated, society begins to rot from within. Every inclusion like this sends a message to young Zimbabweans. That crime pays, that loyalty to power matters more than loyalty to country. That justice is a privilege, not a right, and that is how nations crumble. Not through war, but through the slow erosion of integrity. 8 years later, Operation Restore Legacy stands as a painful lesson in Zimbabwean history. It reminds us that removing a leader does not remove a system, that true reform requires courage, not slogans, and that the future cannot be restored by those who profit from the past. The very forces that claim to protect Zimbabwe's legacy are now accused of betraying it. Instead of restoring trust, they have deepened cynicism. Instead of rebuilding hope, they have rebranded corruption. So where does Zimbabwe go from here? The answer lies not in new slogans, but in real accountability. In leaders who place public service above personal enrichment. In citizens who refuse to remain silent in the face of injustice. Operation Restore Legacy began with the promise of redemption. Today it stands as a warning that without moral leadership, every revolution eventually eats its children. As we look back at 2017, we must ask ourselves, was Operation Restore Legacy ever about restoring legacy, or was it about redistributing power among the same elite circle? The inclusion of figures like Joachim Chivayo and Kudakwashe Tagwirei suggests the latter. It tells a story of a revolution that betrayed its ideals, of a people still waiting for justice, and of a nation struggling to remember what legacy truly means. Zimbabwe deserves better. It deserves leaders of integrity, not convenience. It deserves accountability, not arrogance. And it deserves to see Operation Restore Legacy transformed, not into a slogan, but into a reality. You've been watching State of Affairs Zimbabwe. We tell the stories that others won't. We speak truth to power. And we stand for a Zimbabwe built on justice, dignity, and truth. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more in-depth analysis and exclusive investigations. Because the story of Zimbabwe is still being written.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.